here on Facebook, and we are live here in Zoom. And I am Lorraine Stamp from You'll Know When You Get There. And I'm joined today for our Ask the Coach series on talking about coaching and mentoring with my guest, Tom Murphy. And what I'm going to do in a moment is just hand the reins over to him. He's going to give you an introduction into what he does in his day-to-day life, a little bit about his background, and share his expertise. And then what we'll do is we'll open it up to everyone in the room around what questions you may have. And obviously anyone that is on Facebook Live, if you have any questions or anything to ask Tom, then please feel free to join in. The show is being recorded, so we can send that out afterwards if you are interested. For anyone that's in the room that's not speaking, I'm just going to pop you onto mute. And then if you raise your hand, I can unmute you to ask those questions. So enjoy the show and welcome, Tom. Thank you for joining me on Ask the Coach.
Thank you, Lorraine. It's an absolute privilege to be on your, I think it's your second live, I believe, your second Ask the Coach. I watched last week's, which was very insightful. James seems like a really lovely fella. My name is Tom Murphy, as Lorraine said. I'm from Australia. However, I'm based in the UK now, in the same county as Lorraine. And taking it back almost to the start, when I was a young fella, I was a semi-professional footballer, the real football, soccer, as they call it in Australia. Nothing too exciting. It's probably the equivalent of about League Two at best. So, we won't get too excited about that. But when I say semi-professional, I was paid, but not enough to earn a living. So I then found myself going into engineering. I was a consulting engineer designing multi-story buildings for 10 years. And then I made a slight career change and started to set up my own businesses. So I've set up 7 businesses over the past 11 years and still own 5 today. I've established 3 this year, actually. Terrible timing. If I had a crystal ball, probably might have held off a little bit. But I've set up 3 businesses now in recessions. And whilst it's tough, I think it's like anything really. If you're going to be doing something in life, if you're not committed, then why are you doing it at all? So regardless of the circumstances, and there are always going to be things that are out of our control. We need to be committed to the long haul. So one of my businesses recently that I set up less than 6 months ago came about just by chance. I've always done video blogs whilst I've been running and owning businesses. And so through doing some video blogs, I decided to set up an Instagram page called Life According to Murph. Thought of that one evening after a few beers, and just started sharing my own content. And from that, I started to get inquiries in terms of, do I mentor people? Because I've always, I suppose, naturally mentored people, whether it be informally or formally in my businesses or just business associates, friends. And certainly in my professional or semi-professional footballing days, I was always a natural leader within that environment. So then all of a sudden I just started to mentor people more formally. And then I suppose there are two types of people typically that will get the best out of me. There are people that just generally want to be the best version of themselves, but they're committed to a journey, and it may be the best version of themselves in life or in business, leadership, and so forth. And then the second person is typically a business owner, someone who has taken a similar path to myself or taking a similar path to myself. So wanting to be the best possible business owner, the best leader of their people or the business, or basically just trying to shape a future for themselves and push the boundaries. But my ethos is very much doing that in a sustainable manner. I think there are a lot of people out there, a lot of influencers out there nowadays, and have been for probably several decades, that are setting the what would you call it, the dream that you can build this level of success with a very, very steep curve, and that's sustainable, but it's not. And we very much need to be mindful of our own levels of performance. Everyone's levels of performance is different. And I'm very much about helping people maintain their level of performance in a sustainable manner. So doing it with a nice or healthy what I call an ultimate work-life balance. So that's me in a nutshell, Lorraine.
Absolutely perfect. Thank you so much, Tom, for sharing that insight and an amazing, amazing story, of having those businesses and going through some of the major recessions. I know when we've talked, some of those are major recessions, and yet they're still continuing to trade. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. So opening up to the rest of the room, hello for a couple of you who've just joined. Facebook delayed and it only just posted onto Facebook. So has anyone got any questions that they want to get started with to ask Tom? If you let me know, and then I'll unmute you. Oh, there we go, Sarah. Oh, hang on.
Unmute me. Who's been your, I mean, you must have had a coach and mentor in your own life. Who's stood out for you as being a fantastic mentor?
Well, yes, you're right. I've always had coaches and mentors. One of the best leaders I've had, sort of probably more informally in my life, was a business owner that I was very, very close to. Potentially a competitor, really. It was 2003. I was forging my career in a different path. And I just admired this person on social media, and I was coming up against this person a lot. I was talking to clients a lot and coming up against them, and just missing out on services because of them. And I just reached out and I just said, look, I don't know if you know of me or know who I am, but I'd certainly like to meet over a coffee. And I think a lot of people in business are a little bit scared to actually bring their competitors close to them. But this person was very inspirational, and I'm still in contact with them today. They're in Melbourne, obviously, and because I own businesses in Australia, I do go back 3 or 4 times a year. So I do try and catch up with Paul every now and again. But yeah, he's been an inspirational person. But then equally, I've always liked to follow the path of people that I don't have direct access to as well. So influencers, most people know Simon Sinek.
Yeah.
His ethos is very similar to mine. I think, there are certain people say that he's a little bit repetitive, but actually I think it's a true leader that can actually, maintain an ethos and a path without deviating too much. You don't have to keep reinventing yourself. You can always grow, but I don't necessarily think that he's actually getting stale. I think he's actually quite insightful if you listen to his words and how he communicates. Yeah, always had mentors, and I've got 2 at the moment mentoring. It's probably a 2-way mentorship at the moment. I've got a guy in Somerset and a guy in Exeter. One's more personal and one's more business related. But yeah, I think it's really important if you want to grow as an individual yourself. If I look at, say, Simon Sinek, for example, when I started following Simon, he was here and I was here, and it would be very unfair to compare myself to Simon at that point. So I'm always trying to, follow that level of trajectory. But when I get to there, he's probably going to be there. So, it's very, you shouldn't compare yourself necessarily to people that you're trying to aspire to follow. But I think it's healthy to have that influence, but not necessarily, because if we're coaching and mentoring people, we really need to be constantly pushing ourselves forward, because otherwise, we're probably not doing ourselves justice and not doing our clients justice.
I guess that's where reverse mentoring comes in as well, particularly sort of with the younger generation. Because, I'm fed up with my clients of people bashing millennials, and, I've got 2 Generation Zs living in the house. And it's, I'm constantly saying, they're not whingy or snowflake. We're just different, and we can all learn. So that's what in terms of you learning from Simon Sinek, and but you've still got something to offer, because you'll be doing something different from maybe what he'll be doing. And in a way, it's reverse mentoring. I'm not saying sort of you're younger or older, but it's whether it's generational or background, that's really important. So have you found that being sort of often in terms of, you know, clients that you use, where younger people want to mentor sort of older, or that sort of real sort of mutual mentoring?
Yeah, absolutely. So I told a young entrepreneur last year, he's probably 21, 22, and he was talking to me about investing into his app. And I started telling him a story that an entrepreneur told me when I was his age, you know, literally 20 odd years ago. And he said, this entrepreneur said to me, Tom, in your 20s, you decide what you'd like to do. And in your 30s, you make it happen. And in your 40s, you reap your rewards. Now, I've lived that, and I took that literally. And I've now changed my interpretation of that, which I can share another time. But this young fella, it literally went over his head, because he was just like, I'm doing it now. What are you talking about? And it's so true. You know, you can now just like overnight be successful. You can be a millionaire. You can be famous. All of that. But you can't have wisdom overnight.
No.
And I learn so much from young people nowadays that I think it's really, really important to not be scared to actually, you know, try and learn from all types of people around you.
I think that's a great point. Really great point, Tom.
Yeah, I think when I go back to 2003, when I reached out to Paul, one of my longest mentors, you know, I just think that, you know, we shouldn't be afraid. I think right now, coming out of an L recession, which I do believe will start coming out of this sooner than what a typical L recession looks like, because the pandemic forced a recession. It was a recession we had to have, but it's been brought forward by the pandemic. So I do think we'll come out of it quicker than normal. Right now, we should be looking to collaborate. And I look at, I'm posting a video on my Instagram page today that I recorded yesterday, and it's around anxiety that I see in freelancers and small business owners. They're looking at their competitors too much. They've got so much work. Are they better than me? And all of these anxieties are building up at the moment, which is understandable. But actually, you know, Catherine, your point of difference is you, and my point of difference is me. So why can't we collaborate? Lorraine, why can't everyone in this room collaborate?
We are collaborating.
We probably could never do what each other can do, but we can always add value.
Yeah.
Yeah, really good point.
I'm sure we're all coaching and mentoring, but we all do it differently. And if you can learn from different ways, different perspectives, and it's about sharing. It's a big world out there.
Yeah.
And I think if you're too far up your own jacksie, then it's, you know, you're in the wrong profession. It is about sort of being authentic and you hit it on the head, collaborating.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, I think Lee's got a question. I'll just unmute you. You might have to unmute yourself. Oh, there you go.
Hi, Tom. Tom, listen, I have a couple of questions really, just based on what you've just said. And the first one was when you mentioned Simon Sinek, okay? Because I think, you know, without trying to be disrespectful at all, I mean, obviously, I've followed Simon Sinek for quite some time now, and you know, that's not to say I'm not going to start sort of following you and listening to you now. But up until now, you know, I'm not aware of who you are. So Simon Sinek, I can relate to, yeah. And I think I find Simon quite aspirational, but on a more holistic level. So when he talks, I think he talks a lot of sense, and I can resonate with what he says. But I don't feel like he's talking to me personally, and I think that makes it a little bit easier to sort of grow an audience, because you're not feeling like, you know, somebody's personally talking to you, personally advising you. It's more generic. But I'm really interested in the idea of sort of mentoring one-to-one, and the type of client, the type of person that comes to you for one-to-one mentoring. I mean, do you find there's a specific age range, or is it younger, is it older, is it a mix? I mean, who comes to you for one-to-one mentoring?
Well, at the moment, yeah, it has typically at the moment been age range. I mean, I don't like to sort of pigeonhole people with an age, but it has been 20s and 30s. So I suppose 10 to 20 years younger than myself. Whether I would mentor people that are older than me, I don't see why not. When I was a leader in my football days, I was a player coach when I came out of semi-professional into amateur, and I was player coach, and I was only 25 years old, and I was coaching people in their 40s. So I don't really see a problem with that. I agree with you with Simon. Simon's a very, very intelligent fella. He's studied, I suppose, the psychological side behind, in terms of, the emotional side of the brain and why people actually buy from people. He's a very intelligent guy in terms of how he communicates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've got quite a few people on Facebook and they're watching. So I'm just speaking out to you Facebook guys as well. If there's any questions that you may have for Tom, post the question into the comments and we will come back to you. Is there anyone in the room that would like to ask a question? Okay, Sarah?
Hey, Tom.
Hey, Sarah.
I'm always curious about your definition of coaching and mentoring. I have this conversation a lot with my clients and I think they're different. And even the word coach is like such a broad spectrum of things. So I just wondered what your take on that was.
Oh, do you know what? It's the most commonly asked question, isn't it? When you either call yourself a coach or a mentor. Yeah. Lorraine and I have had this conversation.
What's your flavour of it?
Well, to be honest, I'm gonna say, I probably shouldn't say this, but I don't think
it's between you and me then.
I don't think it really matters. I think people go to a coach or a mentor for guidance or support or clarity. Then they want to work with someone collaboratively. I think a good coach or a good mentor genuinely wants to work collaboratively with somebody, and that's my ethos really, is to just, I suppose, understand a person. And it's when I've employed people, I try and understand them as the whole person rather than just the employee, because the more I can understand who they are as a person and what motivates them in life, what makes them happy, I can help them be more successful in their job as well. So I suppose I don't really have an answer to that. And to be honest, people have different takes, I find, on what a mentor and a coach does. Sure. I do believe, though, that you can do both, and I think it was James actually that said this last week. He said that a good mentor or a good coach can switch. And he said he's done that and said that to clients before, where I'm just going to put my coaching hat on now or my mentoring hat on now. And I haven't done that, probably because I've never really bothered too much about that. I called myself a mentor just simply because I'm surrounded by, probably in my local area, when I go business networking, 1 in 3 people is a coach. And I wasn't sure whether that was going to be something that I wanted to, that was the path I was going to go down, really. And when I set up Life According to Murph, it was like I said, it was just an opportunity to share content. And then I was contacted by people to say, will you mentor me? So I just started to call myself a mentor. But yeah, it's interesting. I mean, what's your take, Sarah?
Well, I think there's many different kinds of coaches, isn't there? Actually, is my take. I think a mentor is generally someone that will share a bit more of the wisdom and pass things down. So often in the corporate world, for example, some of my clients will have mentors because they want to have some advice about how to kind of navigate through the business. And then there's various different coaches. So I think I was just asking you, what kind of coach might you be? So there are performance coaches. I'd say I call myself a leadership coach, but I will work more developmentally rather than performance, although I think they're very related. So it's just a really interesting question, isn't it? And I think we need a new name. I think there's something else that's emerging. Actually, I think there's so many different kinds of coaches. We're getting a little bit lost at that, which is why I think I asked the question. People are getting very confused because there's so many people calling themselves coaches now.
Yeah. I think to kind of add to that, I can give you an example of a couple of clients that I've worked with recently where I have kind of used almost a similar approach to James, where as a coach, my job is to deal with people's own answers. So somewhere within the person, in their subconscious, unconscious, you're basically facilitating a conversation to unearth what is already known. And so I don't provide the answers. And then in my mentoring role, I will sometimes say, I'm going to put the mentoring role on now, and these are some of the things that could help you. So I think their line needs to be kind of shared, because as a coach, it is to facilitate. And then as a mentor, it's the wisdom. I can see where you're coming from, because people do have mixed messages around the difference between the two. The mentor almost is somebody that's walked in the shoes already, and they're going to offer that expertise or their experience to help you and guide you.
And a mentor will also be your coach sometimes, but not always.
Yeah.
There are many mentors my clients have talked about that are no good at coaching at all.
I suppose the only thing I would add there is it's in any case of business, whether you're a coach, a mentor, an accountant, a lawyer, it should really be suited to what the person needs, what the person who's asking for services needs. And if you are good at what you do and you don't feel you can help them, whether you call yourself a mentor or a coach, you need to be honest about that. And so I sort of tailor my services to what the person needs. They come to me for a reason. They usually see me online, or they've seen me at a networking event or whatever, and they approach me to usually just have a conversation. And I think, if you're good at having conversations with people and actually drawing whatever they need out of them, then you can decide whether you can work with them or not. But whether I'm
we've got a question that you've started to kind of talk about, which is from Facebook, and it says, what do you do when coaching or mentoring does not work with a client?
What does the individual do, or what do you
do? What do you do?
I do.
Yeah.
Well, have I had that happen before? Look, there's a particular person that I've worked with not too long ago that after the second session, because I typically ask for a minimum of 5 sessions, because I feel that we need to be committed to a path, and it takes time to initially discover what actually the person needs. But it got to about session 2, I think, from memory, and I was questioning myself. I was wondering whether I could actually help this person, because I could see in their communication and their eyes that everything I was saying, before I'd even finished saying it, they were questioning it. And I suppose it was a bit of a moment for me where I just thought, what do I do with this? And I went into the next session with the plan to just sort of say, to address it. And the person just said to me, well, actually the tools you were giving me in session 1 and 2, I was really questioning. He said, to be honest, Tom, I just thought, oh my goodness, this is not going to work for me. But he said, I've done it and I've actually seen a lot of clarity in it. So I suppose you just need to be honest. At that moment, I was trying to be honest, because in every form of business, if you want to be genuine and authentic about actually providing a quality of service, and the thing you want, the feeling I want to give people is, when you go to a really good restaurant and you tell your friends about it and you try and get them to go, that's what I want my mentees to feel like. I want them to walk away and think, wow, this is really, really helpful. And I want them to actually mention it to other people. If you're not going to get that, I don't think you're actually doing as good a job as you probably could. So you probably just need to be honest with the person and say, I'm not sure that I'm going to give you the results or the best possible version of yourself. It might be best to work with somebody else.
Yeah, and I think sort of back to the point around, that specific question as well, is that honesty is key, because, someone might need something else in addition, i.e. some therapy or something. And I think just being honest about what you can do as a coach or a mentor or whatever profession you're in is being honest with your client, because that's where respect and trust is built. So, yeah, absolutely. So thanks, Tom. That was a really good, clear answer. Lee, did you have a question? Oh,
sorry, just a quick one, really, just based on what you just said, Tom. How do you define how successful you are with a client?
Whether I make them laugh, whether I make them, cry sometimes. I've literally had clients cry. I think it's a measure of the communication and the trust and literally having that person just be at complete ease with you. I think last week someone asked a question of James, the difference between counseling, mentoring, and coaching. And personally, I think that, like you said, Lorraine, we have our limits. So, there's certainly, I certainly don't, and I never will be a psychologist or a counselor. But I feel that a good coach or mentor or counselor can actually almost facilitate to a level all of that if you genuinely care about the person. And I think that the point is we've just got to care. And if we don't care, we're not going to get the best out of people, So we're given 2 ears and 1 mouth for the reason we've got to listen twice as much as we speak. And I think if you can do that and really get that person to genuinely feel comfortable with being able to open up with you in a forum where maybe they can't do that with other people. I have had 1 or 2 people come to me wanting business advice, and actually after the first session, it's become very, very clear that they actually need a counselor. So I've obviously had that very delicate conversation. I haven't said that, but I've helped them sort of through conversation maybe come to that answer themselves.
I think in terms of success, Lee, around success, it's a massive word, and success has a different meaning to every single person. So in an initial session, you would probably ask the question around what does success look like for you? As a coach, that is your success with your client. So the client is always the success part, if that makes sense.
Because someone like me, for instance, I'm no millennial by any stretch of the imagination, but if I was to come to you, for instance, and just say, Tom, look, I want to reach out, I want to talk to someone, but I don't really know what I'm looking for out of it. How would you sort of explore that? How would you sort of work out where to channel, or would you just say, do you know what, Liam, maybe you need to take a different direction and talk to somebody different? I don't know.
No, not at all. No, I think I treat it like any other business I've run. I just have a very, very clear conversation with the person. So I might ask them, what does their working week look like? How many hours do they typically work? What do you do outside of your work? What really start to piece together what I call their life map. And in a very short space of time, I can clearly see what's actually involved in that person's life. And quite honestly, I think a lot of the time we're just trying to do too much in life.
Yeah.
And so we go to someone because we feel overwhelmed, we feel anxious, we feel tired, we don't feel like we're actually achieving, or we're not happy because we're not being as successful as we possibly could. Now that can be in business or life, probably both. And I think quite often we just need to find clarity in what it is we're trying to achieve and take a step back, almost have an out-of-body experience and just say, well, okay, I can now see the wood for the trees, and I'm trying to satisfy too many needs, and I really need to focus in what's important to me right now, and then committing to that journey. So it often just comes out of conversation. But yeah, like we get back to, you've got to be honest. If you don't feel you can genuinely, because people can't work with everybody, Lee. You might have a half an hour session with me, and we just may not be able to, build that rapport.
Sure.
I think back to the point, Lee, where Tom talked about crying or laughter. That whole physiology change when you are building a rapport from a coach to a client is the coach will be able to see your physiology much more, and they'll notice the difference between where you were on the start of your journey to where you progress as well. So it's kind of very much a coach is going to be working with what you don't say and probing around that. So hence why potentially sometimes tears flow, because there's an emotional blockage, and coaches can't really start shifting until that release happens, because we've got to see some of that vulnerability coming out. We've all got baggage, we've all lived a life, and as mine's nearly approaching 50. So there is stuff, and sometimes we've got to shift that in order to move you forward, because if you're holding on to that, you're going to get stuck. So having that relationship and finding the right coach is key. And again, this is kind of why I'm bringing this live, is because people, obviously Tom's got he's highly reputable, he's got great businesses around, and yet not everybody knows him. So he's got his showcase now. People are getting to know him and what he's capable of, and you can develop that rapport just in this arena.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
Any other questions? There are still a few people watching on Facebook, so I keep switching between the two, but anyone on Facebook that's watching, and if you have any questions, please feel free to pop a question on here, and then I can ask Tom directly. Sarah?
I'll do another one. Yeah, I'd just love to hear about some of your favourite experiences, some of your highlights as a coach and mentor.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've not been doing it formally for a huge amount of time. As I said, I've been doing it informally for many, many years. There's a guy who's actually one of my business partners now that I suppose I've been informally mentoring for quite some time. And just the nice experience has just been seeing how well he's progressed. So he's from the UK, and when I was running one of my businesses in Australia, I was still the managing director. I sponsored him and his child and his wife to work in Australia for up to 4 years. And I think it was within 3 years, he went from literally only having 12 months experience in the field to being a senior staff member, to then being a team leader, associate director, and then director. And he's now running the business in Australia, and he's grown it by probably about 10 to 12% growth year on year for the last 3 years. I'd love to take all the credit for that.
Go on, take it. Take it.
Quite clearly, I think the nice experience is that and actually at the time, I should take a step back. At the time, I had another business partner in the business. And whilst we both agreed that Lee was the right person to hire and to sponsor and bring over, there was a reluctance there from my business partner to promote Lee through the business. And it wasn't until that business partner and I parted ways. Unfortunately, the leadership wasn't cohesive at that point, so we decided to amicably part ways. I then promoted Lee because I just felt that he deserved it. He was he had the right work ethic. He cared, and you know what? I think that we should never be afraid of hiring people that are potentially better than us. I think that's true leadership. And I know my limits. I know that there are certain things I physically. I'm not really that interested in doing. I will never be a great manager. I'm great at leading businesses and sort of taking a business on a certain path, and hopefully people will follow. But in terms of actually managing on a day-to-day basis, there are a lot better people that can do that better than me. So to answer your question, that's a really lovely story for me that I'm really proud of. There's a person right now that I've been mentoring for, I think, 7 weeks. And I've helped her go from being employee to setting up her own business in a very, very tough time, and just helping her see the value in what she does and the ability that she has, it was probably just a confidence thing. And she's now ready to launch her own business, which is amazing. So brave to do that right now.
I think back to that point as well around, we're not great at everything, nobody's perfect. And one of the things that, I focus on with people is their strengths, their talents, their uniqueness. Because in life, we tend to kind of pull down the things that we're not good at, and we try and continuously develop them, and we don't go anywhere with it because we're not passionate about it. It's not the thing that we really want to do. So it's, allow other people to do the stuff that you really don't want to do, and just get better at what you are good at, and just get great and awesome, and then make an income from it. That's finding the right thing for you and your passion. Like Tom, he's developed that passion into his income, and he's successful on the back of that. So the success stories, not just for his clients, but for him himself. Anyone else got any questions to ask? I have some questions up my sleeve that I'm waiting for my moment. Clanger questions. Anyone else got any questions?
You're going to throw some curly ones at me, are you, Lorraine?
Too right. Under pressure. No. So I have a question for you, Tom. Why do you do what you do?
So in terms of what I'm doing now in mentoring people, I went home to my son the other day and told him what I did, and I just had this massive smile on my face. You know, I love being able to go home and feeling really, really proud of what I do. You know, having other businesses is lovely. You know, I suppose, you know, being part of a certain, I suppose, a group of people or a business that is going down some path is one thing. That's something I've really enjoyed, but actually helping individuals, I'm getting so much more out of that than I have out of anything that I've done in a long, long time. So yeah, it's actually, in a reverse way, it's kind of a little bit selfish because it's helping me just as much as it's helping people, really.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great.
And if you, I think if you don't get that feeling from being a coach or a mentor, then I you know, like you said at the start, you know, it might not be the right path for you potentially. But I do feel very fortunate that not every day there have been some frustrating sessions or one or two people that I've worked with that I've really struggled to build that rapport very quickly, because I'm very critical of myself, as we all are, and we want it to happen instantly and so forth. But yeah, those nice moments are what you know I'm really excited about. You know, working with as many people as I can, really.
Okay, so the next question, I want you to go back to Tom at age 10. Did Tom see this future?
Funnily enough, one of my businesses just turned 10 in March, and we did a video on exactly that. What did our 10-year-old self? What would our 10-year-old self tell us? You know, what would we say to them? And I think I said something like, "Don't worry too much, you know, but work hard at everything you do." So I've always been the type of person that never really worries too much about the consequences of what I'm about to take on. Call it stupidity. I don't know what you would call it. Not worrying too much about it because you know, things have gone wrong and I have failed numerous times. But I think you've just got to take a chance in life. So I've always just wanted to take chances and wanted to, but if you're going to do that and you're going to back yourself, you've got to be committed. And I think that's what I say to my mentees when I start working with them, why I ask for that 5-session commitment, because you've got to be committed to yourself. And I'm working with a strength and conditioning coach at the moment, I've had personal trainers in the past at the gym, which are great. They're fine. You know, they'll push you relatively hard within a 45-minute, 60-minute session. But then what else do you get between then and that next session? What do you get? Very, very little. But I'm working with a strength and conditioning coach at the moment. He's checking in on me every day. And that's what I aspire to do as well. He's giving people more than just that one session per week. It's no good it's like when you manage people in your business. If you're having a check-in with them on a Monday and then you just check in with them again next Monday and say, how did you go? You're not really sort of developing that person and giving them the best opportunity to be successful. Yeah. So I do think, you know, it's really important that we give more than just that one session. But I digress there. I apologise. You were talking about my 10 years.
No, that's really great. It kind of a bit like the old annual appraisal at work. Totally useless.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lee, you have a question.
Yeah, this is a general question, really, but I'll aim it at Tom. But Lorraine, it might be as relevant to you as well. But I mean, how do you stop yourself from getting too emotionally connected with the people that you're giving advice to? And I'll tell you, for the reason I asked the question is because, you know, you said just now, in response to another question, you said that, you know, one of your sort of nicest memories was, and it was a recent one, that you've taken this young lady 7 weeks ago from being an employee to now setting up her own business, you know, which is, you know, and I'm sure you gave her the confidence to go out and pursue that dream. Yeah. What happens if she fails? How responsible do you feel for taking her down that direction? Or does your sort of responsibility and accountability end when you've sort of reached that goal?
Personally, me, I find it very, very hard to stop the business becoming personal. I find that extremely hard. And I've done a lot of soul searching around that in the last 10, 11 years that I've been owning businesses and employing people. And quite frankly, I don't think that's going to change. I think that's just who I am. So I will take that extremely personal if she doesn't succeed. However, I wouldn't have guided her down that path if I didn't genuinely feel she's got the tools to do it and she genuinely wants to do it. So we went down obviously some quite deep digging to sort of, you know, why do you feel like you want to do this? You know, what's your end goal? You know, and if the values are right and the purpose is right, and I can see that she's got the tools to do it and I can help her through that period, I have no reason why she'll be successful. It's all about timing. And you know, that's what we're going through at the moment, is when will we actually make that leap of faith? And personally, if it was me, I'd be doing it now, because I would be giving myself the time to be ready when the economy turns, and I want to be ready before it turns, rather than, okay, it's turned, now I need to go and I'm going to potentially be behind the curve. So, but we'll see. It'll be over the next few mones.
But it's a great question, Lee.
I'm just saying, I think I mean, firstly, I couldn't do what you do, by the way. I mean, I just want to tell you, I mean, I think I'm probably a little bit too selfish in my own achievements and success to sort of spend time with other people. And that's a horrible thing to say, but it's just me trying to be honest at the end of the day. But I just think that you have you take on in the role that you're doing, whether it's coach, whether it's mentor, doesn't really matter, but it's a huge responsibility in that you are, you know, taking people who are undecided, vulnerable, whatever reason it is they come to you in the first place, and you're ultimately sort of earning their trust and taking them down a path which, you know, they I guess they want to go down. I mean, I'm sure you would never sort of, you know, turn them from there to there. You know, you're just sort of taking them down the road they want to go down. But they're doing it, you know, based on the advice and based on the guidance that you give them. And I find that a huge responsibility that you've got.
It is a huge responsibility, Lee, but the relationship is that they are the driver. The coachee is the driver in this relationship, and they need to be committed to it. As a coach, you wouldn't let any client fail, because you would see when their energy wasn't there, you would see when their conviction wasn't there or their intention wasn't right, and you would tailor it. So, you know, you may have a client that thinks that X is their dream, they start getting closer to it, and X really isn't their dream. So it's a continuous kind of improvement conversation, but you work very closely with that person and you understand them, you build that relationship and rapport, and you know them as much as you can inside out. And if you see that they turn up to a session, whether it's online or offline, you will know if they're not on board. And so you question what I am noticing or what I see or what I feel, and you go into a conversation about that before you even do anything else. From a personal perspective, you're working for the client, and so you're removed, if that makes sense. Of course, we take it personally, but actually you are working for them.
Yeah, and I think, getting back to the very, very start of this conversation, where I was talking about two types of people that I would typically work with. So the type that is making that transition from employee to being a business owner, I mean, usually they're already there. Like they've made that mindset or made that decision. They haven't made the mindset switch necessarily, but they've made that decision that that's what they want to do. And there's this fire in their belly that they just really need go with. And I think that the point of my role is being their manager, because when they go from being an employee to being on their own, and I think this is the mistake a lot of people make in business, is that you go from being an employee where you have support, you have a cushion, you have framework around you that protects you from the mistakes actually physically hurting you, and you have people around you to help you develop. Then you make that leap to being a business owner, and a lot of people go, job done. I've peaked, and now I'm just going to run my own business, and I'm not going to have someone there to actually help me always keep further developing myself and being the best possible business owner that I can. And I think that's the job of the coach or the mentor, is to help that person or support that person through that journey.
Yeah. And actually people do change their mind, and that's allowed,
Yeah.
and the transition from me working in a corporate world for 29 years and then deciding to set up my own business, it has been a curveball, but an exciting one. So we've had some really great questions. I'm kind of mindful of time. We've got about 10 minutes left. There are still people watching on Facebook, but the questions are not coming forward. So anyone that does have a question, just throw them. Sarah, another question?
I'm going to throw a question. I've just been thinking about Simon Sinek, actually. I know you're a fan. So I know he's all about purpose and starting with your why. So I wondered if you were willing to share yours, putting you on the spot, if you've been able to articulate it.
Yeah, look, it's taken me a long time, actually, Sarah, but I think that can change. I don't know if you would agree, but I think
Mine keeps changing.
Yeah. I think as long as you can wake up in the morning and know where you're going, I think there is the importance of knowing roughly what your future looks like, to keep you on the right path. So have one eye on today and one eye on what does the future look like. So my purpose right now is certainly about actually helping people be as successful as possible. And that is my number one focus right now. Previously, it's been also about me and driving, the things that I'm building myself. But I'm now in a very fortunate position. And when I started this path, it wasn't for commercial reasons, and there's pros and cons that go with that. People could say, well, if you're not doing it for money, is he going to work as hard for it? But then on the other hand, I think actually, if I'm not doing it for money, I'm doing it because I actually care. I am charging, by the way. I'm not doing it for free. So my purpose is really just trying to get the best out of people that I work with. But I think the key to that is being true to yourself. And I think that's where a lot of us, when we go into a new venture, and, the exciting thing is this literally is a new venture that I've been doing over the last 6 to 12 months, is something that I've not formally done a huge amount before. It's scary. So I'm taking myself down the path that I'm also taking other people down the path of. And I think it's really important, a lot of the time when we're setting up these new ventures, we understand what we're worth. And I think purpose comes into that. Your values and your purpose start to shape up what your fees are, because I can't physically mentor more than somewhere between 5 and 10 people at a time. I'm only doing one or two people I'm mentoring. They want half an hour a week rather than an hour or so a fortnight. And that's fine. But, when you start working out that the time that goes into preparing for those sessions, the emails and the check-ins and so forth that I provide and so forth, and the emotional drain sometimes that all of that creates for yourself, I wouldn't be able to satisfy wholeheartedly any more than those people. So then I have to frame up my fee structure around that time commitment and how much I can actually output, if that makes sense. So yeah, my purpose is largely just about making sure I'm helping as many people as I can, but with a manageable way.
Yeah, you don't want to burn out yourself, Tom.
And I have. In 2018, I did. I was doing way too much, and I think that's what's really helped me find clarity in helping other people do it in a sustainable way.
Okay, we've got a question from Facebook. So Martin has asked, do you believe qualifications are important to have when coaching or mentoring others?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And absolutely, I think qualifications are important if they're applicable, I think, so I don't have a degree I don't have a degree in business even, and I've run and owned several businesses, but I am doing a course with Mind Valley at the moment. I've done 2 other courses, just short courses. So I haven't done that because I think it's important to have a certificate or any formal qualifications myself, because I've gone down this path knowing that I've achieved it myself. And if a certain person wants to go down the similar sort of path to myself, I can help them do that regardless of whether I'm qualified or not. They can learn from my experiences as well as my experience. So I think if people feel they need a formal training in how to do this, then absolutely. And I think there's benefits of both. I think just because I have the experience doesn't mean to say that there isn't something out there that I don't know, and that I could certainly be a better mentor or coach if I was to do that course. Hence the reason why I'm doing a few at the moment, and I'll probably do many more in the future. Yeah.
I totally agree. Qualifications are needed in certain therapies. So you can't say you're a therapist without the qualifications. So again, with your client, you would make sure that they're aware of what you are qualified in if you are going to be doing anything. So it's a case of what do you need help with in your life or business, and does it require a qualification? And if so, seek the right coach or therapist that has the qualification. Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left. Tom, what we want to do for the last 5 minutes is some of your wisdom. I want you to share some wisdom, some top tips that these guys can either take away personally or professionally that's going to help them.
Look, with utmost respect, I think there's probably more knowledge in here than I could ever. Sarah, I've met Sarah personally. I've not met everyone else in the room, and obviously I've met yourself, Lorraine. So who am I to offer tips to you guys, really? All I will say is that I will never ever work with anybody unless I actually feel they genuinely can benefit from what I can offer. And I think largely it's people that will get the best out of me is they'll actually like me, they'll trust me, and they'll want to achieve similar things to what I've achieved. So I'm not professing to know everything and about everything. I'm only sort of saying, look, this is what I've achieved in life, and this is what I've achieved in business. So if you would like to achieve similar things in a sustainable manner without burning out, but really understanding your purpose and why you would like to do it, then I can help you with that. So I suppose the tip is really be authentic. If you can't wake up in the morning and feel really excited about what you're doing, then it might be time for a change. So, because that's really important. If you're going to be a coach and a mentor, you've got to really, really be genuine about wanting and caring about the person. So it's the same with every work, really. I mean, a couple of the businesses I own are recruitment agencies, and they've got bloody terrible reputations, recruiters. They're seen as a necessary evil. And I remember when I first started as a recruiter, the first 6 to 12 months, I was, I'd go out and people say, "What do you do?" And I'd tell them, and you could see their face drop. Or you'd go to a networking function trying to get business, and people would find out, they'd see your name tag and go, and they'd walk the other way. And it was a real battle. And then I went through a period of time of actually pretending I was something else. I had an alias because I felt insecure about what I was doing. But it was probably year 3 and 4 where I'd hit my performance levels were very, very good. And I felt really good about what I did in a very ethical manner. And I had repeat business, and, it was a really, really, lovely job that I had. I would then enjoy those conversations to challenge people and actually say, well, actually, every industry has good and bad people. So I suppose the tip there is, if you genuinely feel good about what you do, you can be the best at what you do. But if there's something in you that doesn't quite sit right, then it might not be right.
Yeah, I totally agree with that one. Do what you were born to do. Everyone was born with a set of uniqueness, and some of us just haven't found it, and it's about fine tuning until you do. You know, life, you get one, and I think the situation we're in right now is making us really think and reflect about what is important, and do we want to follow the same path for the next 20, 30, 40 years? And so reflection at the moment, you know, if you do have the opportunity where you're not working and you have some headspace, really think and check in with yourself and think, is what I'm doing lighting up my soul? Does my heart sing? Do I need an alarm clock to wake me up, or is my energy and my passion waking me up every day? And if it's not, then change is needed. So that's great. Thank you so much, Tom, for your time today and answering the questions. It's been great having you guys in the room to ask the questions. And thank you to everyone that's joined us on Facebook and asking questions as well. I'm just going to say goodbye from a Facebook perspective. Just stay in the room just for 1 minute. So thank you, Facebook. Join us next week with our new guest. We have new guests every week with a slightly different specialism, because again, finding the right coach is key. And most of the coaches will offer a bit of their free time so you can have a discovery call. So I encourage you to do that. Let me just switch off Facebook. Okay. That is a real surreal experience trying to do both. Okay, I'm just going to flick the recording off.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time.